good evening, and welcome. Wherever you are listening from, allow your body to soften and your breathing to slow. There is nothing you need to follow closely, nothing you need to remember. This is a calm journey through one of the oldest stories ever told, spoken gently, so the mind may rest while meaning unfolds quietly in the background. Before there were names, before there were measures of time, there was a beginning. The book of Genesis opens not with explanation, but with stillness. Darkness rests over the deep, and the world has not yet taken shape. This beginning does not rush. It invites listening. It speaks of a moment when potential existed without form, waiting to be called into being. In this beginning, creation unfolds through gentle separation. Light is spoken into existence, and it is distinguished from darkness. Day and night are named, not as enemies, but as complementary rhythms. The story does not describe conflict, but order emerging from quiet intention. Light appears not through struggle, but through word. The heavens and the earth take form gradually. Waters are separated, sky opens above, and dry land appears below. Each movement is deliberate, unhurried. Seas gather into their places. Earth becomes stable ground. The story moves like a slow breath, expanding and settling, creating space for life to emerge. Vegetation follows. Plants grow according to their kind, bearing seed within themselves. The earth is described as generous, capable of sustaining life repeatedly. Growth is not forced. It rises naturally from what has been prepared. Creation is portrayed not as fragile, but as resilient and abundant. Lights appear in the sky to mark time. The sun governs the day, the moon the night, and stars fill the heavens. These lights are not objects of worship in this telling. They are placed gently, serving rhythm and season. Time itself becomes part of the created order, giving structure to living experience. Life fills the waters and the sky. Creatures move freely through their domains, each according to its nature. The story emphasizes variety and movement. Life is not uniform. It is diverse, animated, and expressive. Creation is not static. It flows. Then animals of the land appear, wild and domestic, small and great. Each is named as good. There is no hierarchy of worth here, only recognition of place. Every living thing belongs. Finally, humanity is spoken into being. Humans are described as bearing the image of God, a phrase that has echoed through centuries of reflection. In this context, it does not describe power over others, but responsibility within creation. To bear the image is to participate in care, to reflect intention through action. Human beings are placed within a garden, a space of harmony and provision. The garden is not merely a location, but a state of balance. Work exists, but it is gentle. Responsibility exists, but it is shared. Humanity is invited to tend rather than dominate, to participate rather than control. Rest appears at the heart of creation. After 6 movements of forming and filling, the 7th day arrives. This day is set apart, not because creation is incomplete, but because it is whole. Rest is woven into the structure of existence. The story suggests that wholeness includes stillness. The rhythm of work and rest becomes a pattern for life itself. Creation does not rush endlessly forward. It pauses, it breathes, It recognizes completion without exhaustion. Rest is not absence of purpose, but fulfillment of it. The opening of Genesis does not attempt to explain how creation happened in measurable terms. It speaks instead to meaning. It answers not the question of mechanism, but of orientation. The world is portrayed as intentional, ordered, and good. This goodness is repeated like a refrain. After each movement, the creation is called good. This repetition is gentle, reassuring. It frames existence as worthy, life as meaningful. Goodness is not earned, it is declared. The story also places humanity within limits. Boundaries are present, not as punishment, but as structure. Creation flourishes within order. Freedom exists alongside responsibility. These limits shape harmony rather than diminish it. As the narrative settles, the garden stands as a symbol of balance between humanity and the world. There is closeness with the divine, harmony with nature, and peace within the self. Nothing is hurried. Nothing is broken. This beginning is not an ending, it is a foundation. It offers an image of how life is meant to feel when it is aligned, calm, purposeful, connected. As you listen, there is no need to interpret or analyze. Let the rhythm of the story carry you. Let the images form and fade naturally. This creation story has been told for thousands of years, not because it explains everything, but because it offers rest to the human imagination. The world begins not in chaos, but in order, not in violence, but in word, not in fear, but in goodness. As this opening section comes to rest, creation stands complete, held within rhythm and meaning. In the next section, the story will move gently toward human awareness, innocence, and choice, as the garden becomes a place of learning as well as peace. As the story continues, the garden becomes more than a place of beauty. It becomes a space of awareness where innocence and choice begin to take shape. Humanity lives within abundance, surrounded by provision, rhythm, and peace. There is no urgency here, no striving. Life flows gently, sustained by what is already given. In the garden, human beings are described as living in closeness with the divine. This closeness is not dramatic or overwhelming. It is quiet and natural, like walking together in the cool of the day. Presence is assumed rather than sought. Nothing needs to be proven. Everything simply is. The garden itself is rich with imagery. Rivers flow outward, nourishing the land beyond its boundaries. Trees grow freely, offering food and shade. The garden is not enclosed to keep life in, but to cultivate balance. It represents harmony between humanity, nature, and the divine. Within this harmony, a single boundary is introduced. One tree stands as a symbol of knowledge, described as the knowledge of good and evil. This boundary is not presented as cruelty, but as structure. Freedom exists alongside limit. Choice exists alongside trust. The presence of a boundary introduces the possibility of awareness. Until this moment, life unfolds without self-consciousness. There is no shame, no fear, no comparison. Innocence here does not mean ignorance, but unbroken trust. Humanity lives without division within itself. The story then introduces the voice of questioning. The serpent appears not as a monster, but as a subtle presence. It does not force action. It asks questions. It invites reflection. The serpent's role is not power, but suggestion. This questioning introduces doubt for the first time. not doubt of existence, but doubt of intention. Are the limits truly for good? Is something being withheld? Curiosity awakens, and with it the desire to know for oneself rather than trust. The choice that follows is quiet, almost ordinary. There is no thunder, no immediate catastrophe. The fruit is taken and eaten. Awareness arrives gently but irreversibly. The shift is internal before it is external. With awareness comes self-consciousness. Humanity becomes aware of itself as separate. Nakedness, once neutral, now feels exposed. Shame enters not because the body has changed, but because perception has shifted. Innocence gives way to self-awareness. This moment marks a turning point. Knowledge of good and evil does not simply add understanding, it introduces tension. Life is no longer experienced purely, it is evaluated. Choices carry weight. Responsibility becomes conscious. Fear follows awareness. When the divine presence approaches, humanity hides. This is not because the presence has changed, but because relationship has. Trust has been replaced by self-protection. Distance is felt where closeness once existed. The questions asked in the garden are gentle. Where are you? Who told you that you were naked? These are not accusations, but invitations to awareness. Responsibility begins with acknowledgement. Blame emerges naturally. Humanity turns outward, explaining rather than owning. The story reflects a familiar human pattern. When awareness arrives suddenly, it is easier to deflect than to remain present. Consequences unfold not as sudden destruction, but as gradual separation. The garden can no longer be inhabited in the same way, not because it is revoked in anger, but because innocence cannot be returned once awareness has arrived. Work becomes labor, birth becomes painful, life becomes complex. These changes are not curses in the modern sense, but descriptions of a new condition. Conscious life involves effort, struggle, and vulnerability. Yet even here, the story remains gentle. Humanity is clothed before leaving the garden. Care continues alongside consequence. Relationship is altered, but not erased. The departure from the garden marks the beginning of human history as we recognize it. Life now unfolds in time, shaped by choice, consequence, and learning. Awareness brings difficulty, but it also brings depth. The garden remains in memory as an image of harmony, not to induce longing for return, but to remind humanity of orientation. The story suggests that awareness is not a mistake, but a stage. This section of Genesis does not portray curiosity as evil. It portrays it as costly. Knowledge expands life, but it also complicates it. Innocence cannot be preserved once understanding grows. As you listen, there is no need to judge the choice made in the garden. The story mirrors human experience. Awareness arrives through curiosity. Growth involves loss as well as gain. The quiet sadness of leaving the garden is balanced by the beginning of journey. Humanity steps into a wider world, carrying both memory and responsibility. As this section comes gently to rest, the garden fades into the background, not as a failure, but as a beginning remembered. In the next section, the story will follow early humanity beyond the garden, as relationships deepen and moral awareness begins to shape human life. As the story moves beyond the garden, humanity begins to live within the wider world. Life now unfolds outside the place of perfect balance, shaped by awareness, effort, and choice. place where actions carry consequences and relationships grow complex. The first generations live close to the memory of the garden. Stories are remembered not as rules, but as orientation. Humanity knows that life once felt simpler, more unified, yet the journey forward cannot be reversed. Learning now happens through experience rather than innocence. Two brothers appear in the story, each offering the work of their hands. One tends the ground, the other cares for animals. Both bring what they have produced. Their offerings reflect different forms of labor, different ways of engaging with the world. The story does not explain why one offering is favored and the other is not. Instead, it draws attention to what follows. When one brother feels overlooked, an inner struggle begins. The feeling is quiet at first. Disappointment turns inward. Comparison takes root. The story pauses here, allowing space for reflection. The problem is not difference, but how difference is held. A warning is given gently. The emotion stirring within is acknowledged. The choice remains open. Awareness offers an opportunity to respond wisely. Yet the moment passes, and action follows impulse rather than reflection. The act that occurs is sudden and irreversible. One life is taken by another. Violence enters the story not as an accident of nature, but as a human decision. The earth itself is said to receive what has been lost, emphasizing that actions affect more than individuals. They shape the world itself. After the act, questions are asked. Where is your brother? The response avoids responsibility. Distance replaces connection. The story does not linger on punishment. It lingers on consequence. Relationship is broken. Trust is fractured. Yet even here, the narrative includes protection. The one who has caused harm is marked, not for destruction, but for preservation. Life continues, though altered. This detail reflects a pattern that repeats throughout Genesis. Consequence and care exist together. As generations pass, humanity spreads across the land, communities form, skills develop, music, craft, and building appear. The story notes these developments briefly, reminding us that creativity continues even amid brokenness. Human potential remains active. At the same time, violence and pride grow alongside progress. The story presents a contrast. Humanity is capable of beauty and harm at once. Awareness deepens, but wisdom does not always follow at the same pace. Genealogies appear, tracing lines of descent. These lists are not merely records, they emphasize continuity. Life continues through generations, carrying both memory and possibility. Time stretches forward, linking past and future. The story then pauses to reflect on the state of humanity as a whole. The earth is described as filled with violence. This violence is not only physical but relational. Trust has eroded. Compassion has thinned. Life has become heavy. This description is not sudden. It emerges gradually. Small choices accumulate. Patterns form. The story suggests that the world humans create reflects the inner state of those who inhabit it. Amid this heaviness, a single figure is mentioned quietly. One person is described as walking with God. This phrase is simple and profound. It does not describe perfection, but alignment. It suggests attentiveness rather than achievement. This figure stands as a contrast, not as an exception removed from humanity, but as a reminder of possibility. Even within a broken world, relationship remains possible. Awareness can still be guided by care. As this section settles, the story prepares for a turning point. The accumulation of choices has led to imbalance. The earth reflects this imbalance. Renewal becomes necessary. This moment is not framed as sudden anger, but as response to sustained harm. The narrative moves slowly, allowing the weight of history to be felt. As you listen, there is no need to dwell on violence. Let the rhythm of the story remain gentle. These moments are included not to disturb, but to acknowledge reality as it unfolds. Human life beyond the garden is complex, capable of growth and harm. Genesis does not simplify this complexity, it observes it patiently. As this section comes to rest, humanity stands at a threshold. The next movement will speak of renewal, preservation, and the possibility of beginning again. As the story turns toward water, waiting, and quiet preparation. As the story continues, attention turns toward renewal. The weight of accumulated choices has settled over the world, and life feels heavy with imbalance. The earth reflects what has grown within human hearts, yet the narrative does not rush toward destruction. It moves slowly, preparing space for preservation and beginning again. A single figure is introduced with quiet simplicity. This person is described as attentive, responsive, and aligned with what is good. There is no emphasis on greatness or power. The description focuses instead on relationship and trust. In a time marked by noise and harm, stillness becomes significant. The world is imagined as standing on the edge of change. Water, which once gathered to allow dry land to appear, now returns as an instrument of reset. This return is not sudden or violent in tone. It is deliberate, measured, and purposeful. The story frames renewal as cleansing rather than annihilation. Preparation begins with careful instruction. An ark is to be built, not as a vessel of escape, but as a space of preservation. The details are slow and specific, emphasizing patience and obedience. The ark takes time to construct, suggesting that renewal requires sustained attention rather than impulse. Life is gathered gently. Creatures enter the ark not in panic, but in order. Each kind is represented, emphasizing continuity rather than replacement. The story lingers here, reminding us that renewal is not about starting from nothing, but about carrying what is essential forward. As the waters rise, movement slows. The ark floats, separated from the world below. This separation is not isolation, but waiting. Time passes without urgency. Days stretch into weeks. Silence replaces activity. The story invites rest within this waiting. Inside the ark, life is held together quietly. There is no description of fear or chaos. The emphasis remains on endurance. Preservation happens not through action, but through remaining present and attentive. Eventually, the waters begin to recede. The movement is gradual, almost imperceptible at first. Renewal does not arrive suddenly. It unfolds slowly, respecting the rhythm of restoration. The first sign of emerging land is tentative. A bird is sent out and returns. Waiting continues. Another bird is sent, and this time it returns with a small sign of growth. A single leaf becomes a symbol of hope. Renewal is recognized not through grandeur, but through subtle change. When the land is finally ready, departure from the ark mirrors the earlier departure from the garden, yet with a different tone. This leaving is not marked by loss of innocence, but by responsibility renewed. Humanity steps forward carrying memory rather than forgetting. A promise is spoken quietly. the natural cycles of the world are affirmed. Seasons will continue, life will move forward within rhythm. This promise is not framed as reward, but as commitment to continuity. A sign appears in the sky, gentle and fleeting. It serves as reminder rather than guarantee. Renewal does not erase vulnerability, it affirms care within it. The story emphasizes that human nature remains complex. Renewal does not make life perfect. It restores possibility. Awareness, choice, and responsibility continue. This section of Genesis speaks softly about beginnings that follow endings. It acknowledges the necessity of pause, waiting, and patience. Renewal emerges not through force, but through attention and care. As you listen, allow the imagery of water and waiting to settle the mind. Let the slow movement of restoration mirror the rhythm of breath. This section comes gently to rest with life standing once more on open ground, held within promise and rhythm. In the next section, the story will turn toward dispersal, diversity, and the shaping of nations as humanity continues its journey forward. As the story continues beyond renewal, humanity begins to spread once more across the earth. Life resumes with cautious steps, carrying memory alongside possibility. The world is open again, wide and waiting. Human beings move outward, forming families, communities, and shared ways of life. Language plays a central role in this new stage. Words shape connection. Through shared speech, people cooperate, plan, and build. Communication allows ideas to travel between minds, creating bonds of understanding and shared purpose. In this early time, humanity is described as speaking with one voice. This unity enables great cooperation. People gather together, settling in one place, choosing familiarity over movement. Stability feels safe. Staying together feels comforting. From this shared language and closeness arises an ambitious project. A structure is imagined that will rise upward, reaching toward the heavens. The intent is not framed as evil, but as self-assuring. The desire is to establish permanence, identity, and recognition. The story does not condemn creativity or building. It pauses instead to observe motivation. The structure is meant to secure unity through height and visibility rather than through trust. It represents a wish to fix identity permanently, to resist change and dispersion. The response to this project is subtle. There is no destruction of the structure itself. Instead, language begins to shift. Communication becomes less immediate. Words lose shared meaning. Confusion replaces clarity. As language fragments, movement follows naturally. People drift apart, not by force, but by necessity. Understanding requires distance. Communities form in new places, shaped by different sounds, customs, and rhythms. This dispersal is not portrayed as punishment, but as diversification. Humanity becomes many rather than one. Difference enters the story as part of unfolding life. Variety replaces uniformity. The earth fills gradually with cultures, languages, and ways of seeing the world. The story suggests that unity imposed too tightly limits growth. Diversity allows life to expand. Through dispersal, humanity learns to adapt. New environments shape new skills. Relationship becomes local as well as shared. Identity becomes rooted in place as well as memory. This section of Genesis reflects a gentle truth. Cooperation is powerful, but control can limit becoming. Life resists being fixed too tightly. Movement and change are part of growth. As you listen, allow the imagery of spreading paths and many voices to settle softly. There is no urgency here, only unfolding. The story prepares to shift focus. From the many, attention will soon narrow to one family, one journey, one promise. This movement from collective humanity to particular story marks the next stage. As this section comes gently to rest, humanity stands across the earth, speaking many languages, living many lives. Difference has entered the world not as division, but as expansion. In the next section, the story will follow a single call and a single journey as attention turns toward Abraham and the beginning of promise carried through generations. As the story continues, the focus narrows from the many to the one. From the wide movement of peoples and languages, attention turns gently toward a single life and a single call. The pace slows. The narrative becomes more intimate. Meaning begins to travel through relationship rather than crowd. A man is invited to leave what is familiar. The invitation is quiet and open-ended. There is no map, no detailed destination, only a promise that unfolding will follow trust. The call does not demand certainty. It asks for movement. Leaving home is not portrayed as dramatic heroism. It is described as gradual obedience. Familiar places are released. Known routines are loosened. The journey begins not with confidence, but with willingness. The promise attached to this journey is not immediate reward. It is future-oriented, stretching beyond the individual life. The promise speaks of continuity, of generations yet unseen. Meaning expands beyond the present moment. This promise is paired with vulnerability. The journey passes through uncertainty, scarcity, and waiting. Trust is tested not once, but repeatedly. The story emphasizes patience rather than success. At times, fear leads to hesitation. Choices are made to preserve safety rather than trust. These moments are included without judgment. The narrative acknowledges human fragility. Growth unfolds through imperfection. Relationship deepens through dialogue. Questions are asked. Reassurance is given. The promise is repeated gently, not as pressure, but as reminder. Trust grows slowly, shaped by experience. Hospitality becomes a defining feature of this life. Encounters with strangers are treated with openness. Care is extended without calculation. Through these encounters, blessing moves outward. Conflict arises within family and community. Separation becomes necessary to preserve peace. The story presents these moments as part of growth. Boundaries are drawn not through dominance, but through mutual agreement. The promise continues to unfold quietly. Land is glimpsed, but not fully possessed. Fulfillment remains partial. The emphasis stays on journey rather than arrival. Waiting becomes central. Years pass. Expectations stretch. Trust matures through delay. The story reflects a gentle truth. Some meanings take time to become visible. Moments of doubt appear. Laughter accompanies disbelief. These moments are tender rather than dismissive. Doubt and hope coexist within the same life. Eventually, new life arrives, not as reward for perfection, but as continuation of promise. The story emphasizes continuity rather than control. Meaning flows forward beyond individual intention. The journey shapes identity. Trust becomes habit. Relationship deepens through shared history. The promise becomes less abstract and more embodied. As you listen, allow the rhythm of journey and waiting to soften the mind. There is no urgency in this story. Movement unfolds at the pace of trust. This section of Genesis speaks gently about beginnings that do not arrive all at once. It honors patience, hospitality, and openness to what cannot yet be seen. As this section comes to rest, the journey continues quietly, carried forward through relationship and promise. In the next section, the story will follow generations shaped by this promise, moving towards struggle, reconciliation, and unfolding destiny. As the story continues, the promise carried forward through one life begins to shape generations. The focus widens slightly, yet remains intimate. Meaning now unfolds through family, relationship, and inner transformation. The narrative slows, allowing space for struggle, growth, and change. The next generation lives within the shadow of promise. Expectations exist alongside uncertainty. The future feels both given and unresolved. Identity forms not through ease, but through tension. The story reflects a truth familiar to human experience. Inheritance carries responsibility as well as hope. Two brothers emerge, different in temperament and direction. Their relationship is marked by closeness and rivalry, affection and conflict. These contrasts are not exaggerated. They are observed patiently as part of ordinary human life. Difference does not automatically lead to division, but it introduces challenge. The younger of the two becomes central to the story. His life is marked by movement and restlessness. He does not remain where he is. Circumstances and choices lead him away from home into uncertainty and solitude. The journey begins not with clarity, but with necessity. In a moment of exhaustion, rest arrives unexpectedly. A simple place becomes sacred through encounter. A dream unfolds, connecting earth and sky, movement and stillness. The dream does not explain the future in detail. It reassures presence. Meaning is not absent, even in unfamiliar ground. This moment marks a shift. The journey is no longer merely physical, it becomes inward. Identity begins to change, shaped by experience rather than inheritance alone. The promise becomes personal. Years pass. Work replaces wandering. Effort becomes daily rhythm. Relationships grow complicated. Love and rivalry intertwine. The story does not idealize these years. It presents them as formative, shaping patience and endurance. The struggle continues internally. Choices are not always generous. Self-interest appears alongside commitment. Yet growth unfolds through repetition. Life teaches through cycles rather than conclusions. Eventually, return becomes possible. The path back is approached cautiously. Memory and fear accompany movement. Reconciliation is desired but uncertain. The story lingers here, acknowledging the difficulty of facing unresolved relationships. Before reconciliation occurs, a night of struggle takes place. This struggle is quiet and intense, physical and symbolic. It unfolds in darkness without witnesses. The opponent is unnamed. The outcome is transformation. The struggle does not end in victory as commonly understood. It ends in limping forward. Strength is altered. Identity is renamed. The change is lasting. This moment becomes central, not because it is explained, but because it is felt. Through struggle, identity deepens. The story suggests that blessing can arrive through wrestling rather than ease. Transformation involves vulnerability. Growth leaves marks. Reconciliation follows slowly. Fear gives way to cautious meeting. The encounter does not erase history, but it softens it. Relationship is restored not through forgetting, but through humility. The next generation inherits complexity alongside promise. Family life remains imperfect. Favoritism and misunderstanding appear again. The story does not hide repetition. It shows how patterns recur until they are transformed. One son becomes prominent through dreams. These dreams speak of future elevation, but they are not received with understanding. Misinterpretation leads to harm. Jealousy turns into action. Separation follows. The separation is painful and unjust. Yet life continues beyond it. Circumstances shift. New environments form character. Responsibility grows through adversity. Time passes. Perspective changes. Those who caused harm grow older, carrying regret and uncertainty. Meanwhile, the one separated matures through service and restraint. Power arrives slowly, shaped by patience rather than ambition. When paths cross again, recognition is delayed. Testing occurs quietly. The story allows time for transformation to be revealed rather than assumed. Reconciliation unfolds gradually. Eventually, truth emerges. Emotion is released. Forgiveness replaces resentment. The reunion is tender rather than triumphant. What was broken is not erased, but it is healed. The story emphasizes meaning shaped through time. Harm is acknowledged without defining the whole. Growth is recognized without denying pain. Purpose is revealed through endurance. The family is reunited. Movement follows again, not in fear, but in survival and provision. Life settles in a new place, carrying memory and hope forward. This section of Genesis speaks softly about transformation through struggle, reconciliation through patience, and identity shaped by experience. It does not rush resolution, it honors process. As you listen, allow the rhythm of long journeys and quiet change to calm the mind. These stories unfold slowly, like breath, like time itself. As this section comes gently to rest, generations stand together, shaped by promise, struggle, and reconciliation. In the final section, the story will come to a quiet close, reflecting on legacy, continuity, and rest at the end of a long journey. The narrative pauses often within this generational journey, allowing reflection on how change occurs. Transformation is not immediate. It is shaped by repetition, by mistakes revisited, and by moments of clarity that arrive without announcement. Struggle is not presented as failure. It is presented as engagement. To wrestle is to remain present rather than withdraw. This presence allows identity to deepen. The mark left by struggle becomes a reminder of growth rather than defeat. Reconciliation is also shown as gradual. Trust rebuilds slowly. Words are measured. Silence plays a role. Healing does not arrive through declaration, but through sustained care. Time becomes an active force in the story. Years soften sharp edges. Memory reframes experience. Perspective widens. Meaning emerges through endurance rather than speed. The generational arc emphasizes humility. No single life completes the promise. Meaning stretches beyond individual control. Each generation carries part of the story forward. This continuity offers rest. The burden of completion is lifted. Participation replaces pressure. Life is lived as contribution rather than conclusion. As this journey unfolds, the story invites the listener to release urgency. What matters unfolds in its own time. This prepares the way for the final quiet settling of the narrative. The story's calm attention to time allows space for reflection on human life itself. Growth rarely follows straight lines. It curves, pauses, and returns. Genesis observes this movement without judgment. Dreams play a quiet role throughout this section. They are not commands, but hints. They point beyond the present without demanding control. Interpretation takes patience. Responsibility matures through service. Power, when it arrives, is tempered by memory of vulnerability. This shaping prevents dominance from becoming destructive. Family remains central. Bonds strain and repair. Love persists through imperfection. The story affirms relationships as the place where meaning is refined. As this long generational movement slows, stability begins to appear. The wandering finds temporary rest. Provision replaces scarcity. This extended section closes with a sense of settled continuity. Life has not become perfect, but it has become held. In the final section, the narrative will release its focus gently, offering closure without finality and rest without forgetting. What remains consistent throughout this long unfolding is presence. Presence in struggle, presence in waiting, presence in reconciliation. The story does not glorify ease, it honors persistence. This persistence allows meaning to surface gently. Nothing is rushed, everything is carried. As the narrative approaches its resting point, the emphasis shifts from events to continuity. Life continues, shaped by memory, trust, and care passed forward. This section now settles fully, having traced transformation across generations, through struggle and reconciliation, preparing the way for the final quiet closing of Genesis. As the long journey of Genesis begins to settle, the movement that once carried families across open land gradually slows. The restless energy of travel gives way to a quieter rhythm, shaped by seasons rather than urgency. Life no longer unfolds through sudden departures or dramatic crossings, but through daily repetition, familiar paths, and the steady presence of place. Communities form around shared memory. The land that once felt uncertain becomes known through use and care. Fields are tended, animals are gathered, and shelters become homes. These ordinary acts mark a transition from wandering toward continuity. The story allows this transition to breathe, acknowledging that stability arrives slowly, almost unnoticed. Time stretches differently now. Days are measured not by crisis or revelation, but by light and rest, work and pause. The sense of waiting that once defined the journey softens into patience. There is no sense that the story is ending abruptly. Instead, it widens, making space for life to continue without constant motion. Generations live alongside one another. Elders carry memory, while the young look forward without knowing what will unfold. The presence of both creates balance. Memory tempers ambition. Hope prevents stagnation. Together they shape a community that does not rush toward completion, but remains open to continuation. The promise that once drove movement becomes less a destination and more a background presence. It no longer pushes life forward forcefully. It supports life quietly, like a foundation beneath everyday experience. Meaning does not announce itself. It rests within ordinary routines. This settling does does not erase hardship. Scarcity and uncertainty still appear, but they are met with accumulated wisdom. Experience has taught endurance. The community responds to difficulty with memory rather than fear. What was once unknown has become familiar enough to face calmly. There is a sense of learning to remain. Earlier generations learned how to leave. These later moments teach how to stay. Staying requires a different form of trust. It asks for patience instead of courage, consistency instead of daring. The story honors this shift without favoring one over the other. Relationships deepen through proximity. Living close allows understanding to grow slowly. Conflict still arises, but it is held within shared history. Resolution becomes possible not because people are perfect, but because they remain present. The choice to stay creates space for healing over time. The land itself becomes part of identity. It holds memory of footsteps, voices, and labor. It witnesses both joy and loss. The story treats land not as possession, but as context, a place where life unfolds and meaning accumulates gently. As movement slows, attention turns inward. The drama of survival gives way to reflection. People remember where they came from and how they arrived here. These memories are not carried as burden, but as quiet guidance. They shape how life is lived now. The narrative emphasizes that settling is not stagnation. Life continues to change, but the change is subtle. Growth occurs through maturation rather than expansion. Roots deepen. Identity stabilizes without becoming rigid. This stage of Genesis offers rest, not final rest, but a pause after long effort. It allows the listener to sense completion without closure. The journey has reached a place where it can breathe. As you listen, allow this sense of settling to mirror your own breath. Let the pace slow. Let attention rest on what is steady rather than what is moving. There is no need to anticipate what comes next. The story does not hurry forward. It lingers here, honoring the quiet significance of continuity. Life, once carried by promise and risk, now unfolds through presence and care. This movement towards stability prepares the way for deeper reflection. With motion reduced, memory and meaning rise gently to the surface. The story is ready to turn inward toward aging, remembrance, and the wisdom that grows when life is no longer rushing ahead. For now, the land is quiet. The community rests within familiar rhythms. The journey continues, but it does so calmly, carried forward by continuity rather than urgency. In this quieter phase, the passing of time becomes a teacher. Repetition reveals meaning that urgency once concealed. Small acts gain weight through consistency. Tending, waiting, and returning each day form a language of trust. Life no longer needs constant reassurance. It finds confidence in rhythm. The community learns to listen to its own pace. There is space for silence, for evenings that arrive without expectation. Stories are shared softly, not to instruct, but to remember. In remembering together, belonging deepens. The future feels less demanding, more open, shaped by what has already been lived. This gentle continuity does not close the story. It steadies it. The ground beneath the narrative becomes firm enough to support reflection. What follows will not rush forward, but look back with care, allowing memory and meaning to unfold without strain. As the years pass within this settled rhythm, attention naturally turns toward aging and memory. The figures who once moved with urgency now move more slowly, carrying with them long histories shaped by journey, struggle, and endurance. Time has softened sharp edges, leaving behind a quieter clarity. What once demanded action now invites reflection. Aging in Genesis is not portrayed as decline alone. It is presented as accumulation. Experience gathers gently, layering understanding over memory. The elders remember not only what happened, but how it felt to live through it. Memory becomes less about detail and more about meaning. Certain moments stand out, not because they were dramatic, but because they shape direction. Stories are recalled in fragments, a departure remembered more for its fear than its distance, a long wait remembered for patience rather than length, a reconciliation remembered for relief rather than conflict. Memory selects what mattered most and allows the rest to fade. This fading is not loss, but refinement. As strength diminishes, perspective widens. What once felt urgent now appears temporary. What once seemed impossible now appears formative. Aging offers distance, and with distance comes gentleness. Judgment softens, understanding deepens. The story reflects this shift without naming it directly. The elders speak less, but when they do, their words carry weight. Speech is no longer used to persuade or command, but to bless, to encourage, to pass on what cannot be written. Blessing becomes a form of memory made audible. It carries hope forward without demanding control. Remembrance in Genesis is communal. Memory is not held alone. It is shared through story, ritual, and repetition. Younger generations listen not only to learn facts, but to absorb orientation. Through listening, they inherit perspective as well as promise. There is tenderness in this exchange. The young do not yet understand everything they hear. The elders know this. They speak anyway, trusting that meaning will unfold later. Memory is planted like seed, not harvested immediately. Aging also brings awareness of limits. Time is no longer endless. The story acknowledges this without fear. Mortality is present, but not dominant. Life is valued precisely because it is finite. This awareness sharpens attention to what endures. Reflection turns inward as much as outward. Individuals review their own paths quietly. Regret may surface, but it is not allowed to define the whole. The story does not dwell on mistakes. It holds them alongside growth. Memory becomes balanced rather than accusatory. In these later years, stillness becomes companion. Long pauses replace constant movement. Silence gains meaning. What is no longer said matters as much as what is spoken. Presence itself becomes a gift. The narrative pace mirrors this slowing. Sentences feel less urgent. Events are fewer. The story rests more often. This rest invites the listener to slow as well, to breathe with the rhythm of remembrance. Aging in Genesis is closely tied to gratitude. Looking back reveals provision that was not always recognized in the moment. Survival itself becomes reason for thanks. Gratitude does not erase hardship, but it reframes it. The elders recognize that the story is larger than their own lives. This recognition brings peace. Completion is no longer required. Participation has been enough. Meaning extends beyond individual effort. As memory settles, fear loosens its grip. The future belongs to others now. This release is not abandonment, but trust. What has been carried will continue to be carried forward. The The story treats this transition gently. There is no rush toward conclusion. Aging unfolds as another phase of life, valuable in its own way. Wisdom emerges not as certainty, but as calm acceptance. As you listen, allow this movement toward reflection to soften your thoughts. Let memories rise without effort. There is no need to hold on to them tightly. They can come and go like breath. This subsection rests within the quiet dignity of aging and remembrance. It prepares the way for reflection on legacy, where meaning moves fully beyond the individual and into continuity carried forward through others. Memory also becomes gentler with time. Sharp moments lose their sting. What remains is understanding shaped by patience. This gentleness allows stories to be held without tension. The past no longer demands correction. It offers insight. The elders learn to rest within what has been lived. They no longer measure life by achievement, but by faithfulness to the journey. Success is redefined as endurance, care, and presence. This reflective stage allows meaning to settle naturally. Nothing needs to be added, nothing needs to be proven. Life has spoken for itself. As reflection deepens, the listener is invited into the same quiet space. Aging here is not an ending, but a widening. Perspective opens, attention softens. This gentle slowing prepares the story to move fully beyond individual memory and toward legacy carried forward through generations yet to come. Time itself becomes a quiet companion in this stage of the story. It no longer presses forward, it rests alongside life. The urgency of earlier chapters has dissolved into calm continuity. What matters now is not what comes next, but what has been carried through. The elders recognize this without naming it. Their presence communicates assurance. The story feels held. This reflection now settles fully, having explored aging and memory as sources of wisdom and calm, preparing gently for the movement into legacy and continuity beyond the individual life. As memory settles and the pace of life slows, attention moves naturally toward legacy. The story of Genesis widens beyond individual experience, turning its gaze toward what continues after a single life has reached its fullness. Meaning is no longer measured by personal outcome, but by what is carried forward quietly through others. Legacy in this story is not framed as achievement or recognition. It is described through transmission. What is passed on is not control, but orientation. Values, habits of care, and ways of responding to the world travel gently from one generation to the next, often without being named directly. The elders understand this intuitively. They do not attempt to secure their place in memory through monuments or declarations. Instead, they live in ways that can be observed and absorbed. Their influence rests in presence rather than instruction. Legacy becomes something received rather than imposed. This movement beyond the individual brings relief. The pressure to complete everything within one lifetime dissolves. Life is understood as contribution rather than conclusion. Each generation adds its part, trusting that others will continue the work in their own time. The promise that once guided movement now reveals its deeper purpose. It was never meant to be fulfilled fully by one person or even one generation. Its strength lies in continuity. Meaning grows through patience, unfolding across time like a long breath. This understanding encourages humility. individuals recognize their limits without resentment. They accept that they are part of something larger than themselves. This acceptance does not diminish significance. It places significance within relationship and continuity. Legacy also involves letting go. Control gives way to trust. Those who have carried responsibility learn to release it gently. This release is not abandonment. It is confidence that what has been nurtured will continue to grow. The story emphasizes blessing as the primary vehicle of legacy. Blessing does not dictate outcomes. It offers goodwill, hope, and encouragement. It acknowledges uncertainty while affirming care. Through blessing, the future is entrusted rather than managed. This act of entrusting is quiet and profound. It marks a transition from doing to allowing. The elders step back without disappearing. Their presence remains as memory and influence rather than direction. Legacy in Genesis is also relational. It moves through families and communities, not isolated individuals. Shared stories, shared meals, and shared rhythms carry meaning forward more effectively than instruction alone. Life teaches life. There is gentleness in this process. Nothing is forced. Growth is allowed to take its time. The story honors this patience, suggesting that lasting meaning cannot be rushed. As attention moves beyond the individual, fear of ending softens. What matters has already begun to continue. The future is not empty. It is populated by those who will carry memory forward in their own ways. This perspective invites rest. The burden of permanence lifts. Life does not need to be secured against time. It participates in time. Legacy also reshapes how the past is held. Mistakes and failures are not erased, but they are integrated. They become part of a larger story rather than final verdicts. What is passed on includes resilience as well as wisdom. The narrative tone here is calm and expansive. It looks forward without urgency. It looks backward without regret. It holds time as a companion rather than a threat. As you listen, allow this widening perspective to ease any sense of pressure. There is no need to finish everything. What you carry forward matters, even if you never see its outcome. Genesis, in this movement, teaches that life is meaningful, not because it ends, but because it continues. Each life contributes to a larger unfolding that remains open. This understanding prepares the way for farewell without fear. Legacy makes letting go possible. Continuity makes rest available. As this subsection comes to rest, meaning has moved fully beyond the individual. What remains is trust in continuation, carried gently through time, relationship, and shared life. Legacy also lives in quiet imitation. Children watch how adults respond to difficulty, how they treat others, how they rest, and how they endure. These observations shape future choices more deeply than instruction ever could. Meaning passes silently through example. The story suggests that continuity does not require uniformity. Each generation expresses inherited meaning differently. Change is not failure, it is adaptation. What remains constant is orientation toward care, trust, and relationship. This adaptability allows legacy to survive changing circumstances. Meaning is not bound to a single form. It moves freely, reshaping itself while retaining depth. This flexibility prevents stagnation and keeps the story alive. As responsibility is released, gratitude often emerges. Gratitude for having participated, gratitude for what has been received, gratitude for what will continue beyond personal sight. This gratitude softens departure. Legacy, then, is not about being remembered accurately. It is about contributing honestly. What endures is not detail, but influence. This perspective allows the story to remain open. There is no final resolution, only ongoing unfolding. Life continues quietly, shaped by countless contributions that do not seek recognition. This expanded understanding settles gently, completing the movement from individual journey to shared continuation. In this way, the story breathes outward rather than closing inward, meaning remains spacious. The future is welcomed without demand. What has been lived is enough to allow what comes next to arrive naturally. As the long narrative of Genesis continues to soften, the movement of the story turns toward farewell. This farewell is not abrupt, nor is it heavy with sorrow. It unfolds gently, shaped by acceptance and trust. Those who have carried responsibility for many years begin to release it, not because it is taken from them, but because its time has been fulfilled. Blessing becomes the central gesture of this moment. Words are spoken not to command the future, but to encourage it. Blessing does not attempt to control outcomes. It offers goodwill, care, and hope, allowing what comes next to unfold freely. In this way, blessing becomes an act of trust rather than authority. The figures who bless do so with awareness of their limits. They understand that their role is changing. What once required guidance now requires release. This transition is handled quietly. There is no struggle against it. Acceptance arrives naturally, shaped by long experience. Farewell in Genesis is not framed as disappearance. Presence remains, though its form changes. Influence continues through memory, example, and the lives that carry forward what has been received. Letting go does not mean absence, it means transformation. The tone of this moment is peaceful. There is no urgency to resolve every remaining tension. What has not been completed is entrusted to time. The story acknowledges that not everything must be settled for peace to be present. Mortality is approached without fear. It is recognized as part of the rhythm established from the beginning. Life unfolds, rests, and returns to stillness. This return is not portrayed as loss, but as completion of a cycle. The elders look upon what has grown beyond them with quiet satisfaction. They see continuity where once there was uncertainty. This sight brings rest. Effort gives way to gratitude. Striving gives way to presence. The act of blessing often includes naming. Names are spoken not to fix identity, but to affirm relationship. Naming acknowledges connection and belonging. It reminds those who receive blessing that they are seen and held within a larger story. Farewell also creates space for silence. Words become fewer. Gestures carry more meaning than speech. The narrative slows further, mirroring the inward movement of release. The story does not dramatize this moment. There are no final speeches filled with instruction. Instead, there is simplicity. Blessing is offered. Relationship is affirmed. Trust is extended. This simplicity reflects maturity. Life no longer needs explanation. It has been lived fully enough to speak for itself. Peace arises not from certainty but from acceptance. Those who remain receive the farewell without urgency. They understand that continuation now rests with them. The transfer of responsibility feels natural rather than forced. The story honors this mutual recognition. As you listen, allow this gentle release to soften any sense of holding. There is nothing here to cling to tightly. What matters has already been given. The farewell does not sever connection, it reshapes it. Memory, love, and influence continue to move quietly through time. The story suggests that what is essential is never lost. This movement toward release prepares the listener for rest. The energy of the narrative diminishes. The pace slows further. Attention turns inward. Genesis approaches its close, not with finality, but with calm continuity. Blessing, farewell, and release create space for stillness. This section rests in that stillness, allowing the listener to settle. What follows will not introduce new movement, but deepen rest, guiding the story gently toward quiet closure. Release also involves reconciliation with unfinished hopes. Not every desire finds fulfillment within a single lifetime. Genesis allows this truth to exist without bitterness. What has not been realized is entrusted to continuation rather than regret. Hope is carried forward, not abandoned. The farewell moment acknowledges interdependence. No life unfolds alone. Every journey has been shaped by others, and every ending is woven into shared history. This awareness brings humility. Gratitude extends outward rather than inward. Blessing, in this context, becomes a bridge between generations. It carries memory forward while allowing freedom. It speaks to the future without defining it. This openness gives blessing its gentle strength. There is also a quiet joy present in release. The weight of responsibility lifts. Rest becomes possible in a new way. The elders no longer need to anticipate what comes next. They can simply remain present. The narrative allows space for this joy without exaggeration. It is understated, like a calm evening after long labor. The day has been full. Night arrives naturally. As farewell unfolds, attention shifts from individual roles to shared rhythm. Life continues, not because someone directs it, but because it has been sustained. Trust replaces effort. This trust extends even into uncertainty. The future remains unknown, yet it is no longer threatening. The story suggests that unknowns are part of continuity, not its opposite. Silence grows more prominent. Words slow. The listener is invited to rest within this silence. Nothing more needs to be said. This gentle ending of roles and responsibilities prepares the narrative for complete stillness. The story has given what it needed to give. Blessing lingers after words end. Influence continues without presence. Meaning remains without demand. This expanded farewell settles the story fully into calm acceptance, preparing the way for the final movement into rest and quiet closure. As the final movement of Genesis unfolds, the story releases its remaining tension and settles fully into stillness. Nothing new is introduced. Nothing is required. The long arc of journey, struggle, promise, memory, and legacy now softens into quiet presence. The narrative does not conclude with instruction or declaration. It rests. The rhythm slows even further. Words feel spaced, like gentle breaths. Attention no longer moves forward through events, but inward What has been lived has been enough. What continues will do so without demand. Stillness here is not emptiness. It is fullness without effort. The land rests. The people rest. Memory rests. The story itself seems to exhale, allowing the weight it has carried to be set down gently. Time, which once pressed forward through urgency and expectation, now stretches into openness. There is no sense of hurry. Moments are allowed to pass without needing to be filled. Silence becomes a companion rather than a gap. The narrative no longer focuses on individuals or generations. It widens beyond names and timelines. What remains is continuity itself. Life persists quietly, shaped by rhythms established long ago. This resting state invites the listener to rest as well. There is nothing left to follow closely, no thread to hold tightly. Meaning has already been woven. It can now be felt rather than traced. Breath becomes noticeable. The rise and fall mirror the rise and fall of the story itself. Long movements followed by pauses, effort followed by release. Listening becomes effortless. Genesis, at its close, does not explain what comes next. It does not attempt to resolve every question. Instead, it trusts the listener to remain within the quiet it has created. The story offers space rather than answers. This space is gentle. It does not press for belief or understanding. It allows reflection to drift naturally or to fade entirely. Both are welcome. The sense of night deepens, not as darkness to fear, but as covering. Night gathers what has been scattered. It brings rest to the land and to thought alike. Memory settles into the background like distant stars, present but not demanding attention. The past no longer pulls. The future no longer calls. Only now remains. The cadence of the language continues to slow. Sentences lengthen and soften. Meaning spreads thinly and evenly like light across calm water. Nothing is missing here. The absence of movement is not lack, it is completion. Completion without closure, continuity without effort. The story has travelled far to arrive at this simplicity. From beginnings shaped by word and light, through journeys shaped by trust and waiting, through generations shaped by struggle and reconciliation, it now rests in what simply is. This resting place is not final. It does not close the door. It leaves it gently open. Life will continue beyond these words, just as it has continued beyond every chapter. As a listener, you are not asked to carry anything forward consciously. Whatever remains with you will remain naturally. Whatever fades may fade without loss. Attention softens further. Thought becomes less defined. Awareness expands gently without focus. This is the space where sleep often arrives, unannounced and unforced. The story does not resist this arrival, it welcomes it. Rest is part of the rhythm established from the beginning. If images remain, let them drift. Land under quiet sky, a dwelling at rest. Generations moving softly within memory. If no images remain, that is also enough. The words continue, but they ask less and less of you. Their purpose now is simply to accompany the slowing of mind and body. Nothing needs to be remembered accurately. Nothing needs to be held together. The story has already done its work. There is a sense of safety here, not because everything is known, but because nothing is demanded. The unknown rests alongside the known without tension. As the cadence continues to slow, Even listening may become optional. The sound can fade into background like wind or distant water. Genesis ends not with conclusion, but with presence. Presence without urgency. Presence without demand. The quiet here is intentional. It mirrors the stillness that follows a long day. Muscles release, breath deepens, awareness drifts inward. There is no final lesson, no final statement. Meaning remains open like a night sky without edges. If sleep arrives now, it arrives naturally. If wakefulness remains, it remains gently. Both belong. The story does not need to say goodbye. It has already released what it carried. What remains is calm continuity. The final words approach without emphasis. They do not seek to be noticed. They exist simply to mark the slowing of sound. Rest here. The journey has unfolded. The rhythm continues quietly. Nothing more is required. Life goes on. And so the story rests. Stillness deepens gradually. The sense of arrival lingers without needing confirmation. The mind no longer searches for the next idea. Thoughts slow and lengthen, appearing less frequently, dissolving more easily. This final movement does not attempt to guide. It simply remains. Remaining is enough. The story has become atmosphere rather than narrative. The quiet holds gently. Nothing interrupts it. There are no sudden turns, no shifts in tone. Everything moves at the pace of rest. You may notice the weight of the body settling more fully. Shoulders soften, jaw releases. Breath becomes slower and deeper without effort. These changes are natural responses to calm. Genesis at rest mirrors the seventh day spoken of at the beginning. A pause woven into existence itself. Not emptiness, but completion. In this pause, attention widens. Sounds outside the story may fade or blend. Awareness becomes less specific, more spacious. The words continue only to support this spaciousness. They do not ask to be followed. They exist as gentle markers of time passing peacefully. If memory returns to earlier moments in the story, allow it. If memory fades entirely, allow that too. Nothing needs correction. The sense of night becomes comforting. Darkness here is not absence, but shelter. It allows everything to rest from being seen. As time passes, even the idea of time loosens. Moments are no longer counted. They arrive and pass without notice. The story trusts this process. It does not attempt to hold attention, it releases it. This release is the final gift of Genesis. After carrying so much movement, so many lives and generations, it offers rest. You are free to drift, free to remain, free to let the sound pass through without engagement. There is no ending to reach. The story has already settled. Stillness becomes the primary presence now. Thought becomes quieter. Sensation becomes softer. Nothing interrupts this calm. The journey is complete enough. Rest continues. Breath remains steady. The body remembers how to rest without instruction. Muscles soften further. The mind drifts like calm water under a quiet sky. The words slow even more. They arrive with greater space between them, allowing silence to expand. This silence is not empty. It is full of ease. Nothing presses forward. Nothing pulls back. Everything is held. Genesis has spoken what it needed to speak. What remains is presence. The night carries the story gently onward, beyond words. You may rest here as long as you wish. There is no signal to wake. There is no signal to finish. Only calm, only quiet, only rest. As awareness continues to soften, the distinction between listening and resting begins to blur. Sound becomes part of the background, like distant wind or slow-moving water. Attention no longer needs to follow meaning. It can simply exist. The story remains present without effort. Its tone stays even, gentle, and unchanging. This consistency supports rest, allowing the nervous system to settle more deeply. Nothing new will be introduced now. Repetition is not needed. Calm has already been established. The mind may wander briefly and return, or it may drift entirely. Both are natural. There is no task to complete. Genesis concludes by not concluding. It allows continuity to extend beyond words. Rest remains available. Silence grows. Breath slows. The night holds everything gently. Stay here or drift. Both are welcome. The final quiet stretches on without boundary. Nothing signals an end. The calm simply continues, carrying you forward into rest. The story has become silence, and silence is enough. Remain here gently. There is no expectation beyond this moment. Rest unfolds naturally when nothing resists it. The night continues quietly. So does the calm. Nothing more will be added. The calm remains uninterrupted. The space is open and steady. Rest stays with you. The story is complete in its quietness. Nothing presses forward. Rest continues. Stay here gently. The calm does not end. It simply remains. Nothing more is needed now. Rest is here. Remain at ease. The night holds everything softly. Calm continues without change. Rest remains. Silence stays. Peace continues. Rest. The calm remains with you as long as you need it, steady and unchanging through the night.